To build the animated sprite, there's lots of things we could do. The easiest way, though, is draw a rectangle, grab the select tool, click on it with the select tool. It puts the hash pattern on it, telling you that object selected. Enter in a width. I'm going to make my artwork. I'm going to make my frog 32 by 32, not 64 by 64, simply because when I'm animating that around on screen, 64 by 64 is really big for a sprite. So I want something a little bit smaller so it's more maneuverable, and I have to then cover more screen to make it happen. Now it doesn't matter where this is on screen because we're using this blue box that I've made here. It will simply be a guide. When we're all done, it's just a guide. And we'll either delete it or transform it into a guide layer so it doesn't then publish with the rest of the project. But it gives us a size reference, and that's what we really care about. Now, my next thing I want to do is I need to convert this into a movie clip. Once it's a movie clip, I will have an option to export this as a PNG sequence or export it as a sprite sheet. And both of those are advantageous for when we want to bring it to life with programming. So if I right-click, we see convert to symbol. F8 will also do it. Otherwise, modify, convert to symbol. So my object is selected. If nothing is selected, convert to symbol is grayed out. And you will see insert new symbols available, but we don't want to do that. So select it, right-click, convert to symbol. There's three types of symbols. If you haven't been working in the tool, it will default to movie clip as the default symbol type. Otherwise, make sure you select that. We don't want it to be a button or a graphic. It needs to say movie clip. And you can name it whatever you want. That name that you're giving it is the name it will have when it shows up in your library. That name is also then going to be the prefix that it uses for all of the files that you export out of it. So if you don't give it a name, you'll have symbol 1, symbol 1-1.png, symbol 1-2.png. No, that's just silly. We don't want to go there. All right, so now I can hit OK. And now we can see it's a symbol. The hash marks went away. It shows up a little bit differently. To now work with this and to actually build our animation that will fit within the square, if I double click on this, it allows me to edit this symbol. So now I'm editing the timeline of the symbol. I'll see it says up top left, scene 1, and then my symbol name, in this case, it's frog. Now, when I look at what's on screen here, I'll see that, wow, that's really tiny to draw on. And if I was really good and used a magnifying glass and stared at my monitor and had a retina display, that'd work awesome. But the easier way is to zoom in on this. So we can see our current zoom is at 100%. Well, the standard keyboard zooms of Command plus and Command minus work here. So I can now zoom in and go, okay, that is now the box that I will be drawing on. Bottom left, I have my layers. And this layer now will be my guide layer, so I'm going to lock it so I can't now work on it. If I tried to paint on it, it will scold me and tell me that that layer's locked. Do you want to unlock it? And I'll say, no, I just want it there. Let's leave it. And when we're all done, if we turn it off with clicking its eyeball for visibility, that will not prevent it from publishing. It will still publish in it. So that's one of those little gotcha things we have to keep track of. If you're used to in other programs, you turn off the eyeball, then when you publish something, that layer stays off. Not so in Flash. Flash just goes, oh, you just didn't want to see it while you were working, but I'm sure you still wanted it. It's like, no, that's why I turned it off. But that's how it works. So our two options when we reach that point are we can delete it, or if we double click on the little page icon in the left corner of that layer, we can tell Flash that this is not a normal layer, but it's a guide layer. So if I choose guide, instead of normal, it becomes guide. It looks the same, except the icon changes from a page to a T-square. And at that point, when I publish this, it will not show up. So it's kind of handy. So if I'm back at scene 1, we'll see at scene 1, oh look, it's not there because it's a guide layer. It's not showing up. And now I have to get back into it, I need some artwork to click on. So let me zoom back in. 800 seemed to be a decent And now I lost it as I was zooming. There you go, okay. So I'm zoomed in. So if I want to start painting, I can add a new layer. Like every other program, you click the little page icon, you get a new layer, then you're good. And on this layer, I'm going to draw my character. I'm doing a frog, so I guess I'll choose a green kind of color. I can make my brush bigger or small. I can draw in and decide that. He's going to have some legs. I think I made his body a little too big for the box, but he's a very well-fed frog. Now, when you are animating a character and trying to build it frame by frame, what's really nice and useful about Flash is the fact that it gives you an opportunity to see what's on a previous frame. So currently I have my frame 1 down at the bottom. And if I want my layers to be named, so if you're very well organized as a person, you can name your layers and it makes it easier to figure out what's going on. You just double click on a layer, right click on it, rename. Okay, so now it's been done. Now, if I want to redraw this frog for the next frame, I need to insert an empty frame to draw into, because I can't just click at frame 2. The playback head won't move to frame 2 because there's nothing there. I can't click out here. So if I click at frame 2 and hit F7 on the keyboard, it inserts an empty frame. And now I can draw that frog. Now the hitch here is I can't see what's on the previous frame until I turn on what's called onion skinning. Down at the very bottom, there's a bunch of little icons that on a Gigantor high-resolution retina display are so tiny you can barely see them. But if you look really close, they will give you tooltips, and the first one of these icons is onion skin, and you click on that. So we have our different kind of control buttons on the bottom, our loop button, but I want onion skin. So I click on onion skin, and now it shows me what the previous frame looked like. And now if I want to draw my frog, so I'm going to create his standing animation here, or his stationary one. So he's just going to move a little bit and just kind of have a little movement going on because he's breathing and he's thinking about being active, but his feet are mostly going to stay in the same place. So I can trace what has happened before. I can now trace that artwork. Now the fun part about doing this, now I can go back and forth and we see how, and I'll just turn off my guide temporarily so we can see. So there's a little bit of change going on. And now I can repeat that process by hitting F7 on the keyboard. And F7 is the same as right-clicking and choosing Insert Blank Keyframe, or going under the Insert menu, Timeline, Blank Keyframe. It's F7. If you notice, frame is F5, keyframe is F6, blank keyframe is F7. And that's what I want. So now I'm going to draw the next frame of my animation. So the advantage of doing this here versus in Photoshop is we can really see what's going on each frame as we're working with it. And by just having subtle changes from frame to frame, we create a little bit of movement so we don't look like there's a static dead character on screen. Now his eyes aren't animated yet because I haven't redrawn those. But I can navigate to the next frame and redraw his eyes. Now you will notice I haven't done any filling of colors yet. It's much easier to draw your outlines and then go back and use the paint bucket tool to fill in your colors. It's important when you're doing this that if you don't enclose a color area, so if you have a circle that's almost closed but not quite, the paint bucket will not fill it because the paint bucket needs it to be solid. It needs to enclose a whole shape or area. So 3 frames. And if I like what I have, then I can go through and start filling it with color. I could draw in more frames as needed. And for the purposes of demonstrating this, this is going to be more than sufficient on number of frames. Now when you're painting, it helps to turn off onion skinning so you can really, otherwise it gives you really weird kinds of effects. No, I don't like that color. Let's try again. Really don't like that color. That'll work. Now there is no way to paint across multiple frames. So we can't just highlight a bunch of frames, click once, and paint across multiple frames. It's not smart enough for that. And if you turn on loop, you can start to get a sense of how your animation may play. Now if I zoom out to actual size, oh, it's a little small there. Go to 100%. We'll see at 100%. That's what he looks like. So it's going kind of spastic fast. If I need to slow down the animation, I need to add in more frames to it to make it slow down. And we can do that without having to draw more frames. So it's also possible to extend this out by adding more frames, by making each frame show up on screen a little bit longer. And we can do that by right-clicking and choosing Insert Frame, or hitting F5 on the keyboard. So I click on a frame and hit F5 and it extends it out. And now if I hit play, we'll see he's a little bit slower. But knowing that it's going to play faster when it gets into programming, I'm going to extend that out even further. So now if I hit play, can see there's my twitching frog waiting to move. After the animation's done, feel free to change your main movie back at scene 1, main movie frames per second to 60. You can test your movie and go, oh look, hey look, there's my frog. We test movie by holding down the command key and hitting return on the keyboard. If you're in Windows, it'd be control and return or enter, and then that will pop it up. Otherwise, under control, you can go to test movie and just choose test right there, command return. There it is. Look, flashy frog. Okay. So once that's working, in your library, which is typically next to your properties window. Now, if someone has messed up your user interface, moved things around, you can't find stuff, under the window pull-down menu, you will see library as an option. So if it's disappeared or been closed, you can get to it. But in the library, you will right-click on the frog, and you have two options. You can export a PNG sequence, or you can generate a sprite sheet. And we'll take a look at both of those. We'll probably be working with the PNG sequence code when we get back after the break, but it's worth understanding what both do. Now, before I do that, it's not a bad idea. Flash is a habitual crasher. It's a party crasher, and it's a real downer that way. It likes to go belly up. So you really are strongly encouraged to save on a regular basis. So I'm going to save my frog file, because I'll want to go back to this when we come back. Now, if I export a PNG sequence, it's going to export those documents, and now I'm going to make a folder to put it in so I can find it. Data seems like an appropriate name since that's what we use for our image folders. And as a PNG sequence, then I hit save. And apparently I was a pixel big by a pixel big on it, because mine's 33 by 33, so I need to go find my offending pixel, or I'm just gonna suck it up and go close enough for now. My animation was 12 frames long. It tells me it's gonna export 12 frames, and I hit export, done. If I go to my Finder and take a look, so in my data folder, I will see that there are my 12 graphics that it exported each one of my frames. So we can see frame 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, technically, because each image is repeating for 3 frames, I could get by with actually having to use fewer images, and I could program it so it loads in extra copies of them, so then it plays slower. I mean, it is possible to do that, but we're going to assume that I actually drew all 12 frames of the frog here, so they're all really unique and awesome and cool. So that's the easy way to make a sequence. Now, if I want to do a sprite sheet, generate sprite sheet, comes up, and now we can see, hey, look, there's a sprite sheet, and now I can choose, well, auto size works, there we go. If I don't want to auto size it, shows me there's that. If we don't trim it, if we knew a specific size we wanted it to be, we do want to probably use ping 32. Ping 8 can work. It supports transparency, but you have to make sure your artwork has fewer colors. In this case, the frog would probably do just fine with a ping 8 versus a ping 24, because it only has 3 colors in it plus transparency, so it would work okay. Now, another thing that we can do with this is you can actually have Flash generate a data file to go with it that stores information about how many images are in this, how big are each one of the images, where are they located within the sprite sheet, and then it's possible to write programming code that actually reads all of that, and that's really cool. It's also possible to export it out using the Edge Animate format, and then Edge Animate can actually read this sprite sheet, and then you now have an animated graphic inside of Edge Animate, which is really awesome too. But I don't care about a data format, so I won't choose that. It's going to export it out as frog PNG. Let's see, let's go choose my folder. And I'll choose get rid of it. And now if I look, here is my frog. And it actually knew that there were only 3 individual unique pieces of artwork, thus it only animated those 3. If I wanted it to do more, then I would have to try and force it, which I think. There we go. If I don't stack the frames, then we can see each one of my frames are exporting. And there's my frog sprite sheet. So we can do it as a sprite sheet, or we can do it as a numerical sequence of images. I'm going to recommend for what we're doing that we do it as a series of images. So let's do that.